Welcome to the Baby Playbook podcast. Thank you so much for your company on another episode. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, who we're going to be chatting to about all things picky eaters. This is a really important topic to get on top of when you start to think about solids, because I've said this before in one of our solids episodes. It's funny, you have your birth and then you somehow have to get through that, and then you have a newborn and you get through that, but then very, very quickly all of a sudden solids starts to really creep up, and it's something that you have to start to think about and figure out, and there's so many different approaches and ways to do it. There's a lot to think about when it comes to introducing solids with a baby. Now, we do have an episode on introducing solids, which I'll link you in the show notes, but today I really want to hone in on the I guess it's like a bit of a fear that all parents go through, that they'll develop a bit of a picky eater when they start to introduce solids to their baby. I know when I started solids with Noah and Leo, I was so mindful of all the kind of rules and tips and tricks of make sure you start with vegetables and not fruit, because you don't want that to get a sweet tooth. There's so many things that, you come across that you have to kind of decipher and figure out and make sure that you're taking the right approach when it comes to bringing in food into your baby's life. So today's amazing guest is Lisa Baker. She's a nutritionist. She's a product developer. She's a researcher, an author, and an illustrator. And we'll get to chatting about her books, which are very, very handy in this process as a parent, very, very soon. But thank you so much for your time today, Lisa.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on.
Well, Lisa, you're also a mummy of two gorgeous kids as well. So I first wanted to kickstart with, how was introducing solids for you? How did you kind of approach this, especially as a nutritionist? Because I feel like this would have been both a really exciting time for you with, I'm sure, your love of food, but then also a really daunting time thinking, well, I know so much about this, I better not stuff it up, kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And I guess in that sense, I did feel maybe an extra layer of pressure because I did know the theory, but as we know in parenting, theory and how things actually happen are two very different things. So I just tried my best to be as relaxed about it as possible. I was quite lucky that both of my children were very keen to start solids and were really fascinated by food. So I didn't have too much trouble in that first introductory stage. But both of them have also developed little patches of picky eating as they've been growing up, and we can usually handle it pretty well and get them back on track. But it's not just smooth sailing.
It really isn't. And that's the other thing as well, is a picky eater can look like it can take many different forms, right? I think before you become a parent, you think picky eater, oh my gosh, that must be a nightmare of a child who doesn't eat anything, and you have to make specific food in a specific way every single day, the same thing. But a picky eater can also be on a smaller scale, right? Kids that have an issue with particular texture or particular foods. Talk us through, I guess, what does a picky eater look like? What are the different variations and what are the different forms?
Yeah, it's a great question because it can look so different in all children. Just expect really that at some stage all children are going to have a little bit of a picky eating patch, and it's usually between the ages of about 18 months to 4 years, and it can start sooner, can go on longer, but it's the sort of 18 months to 4 years, it's the most common. Usually they're not too extreme and they don't last for too long and aren't anything to be concerned about. And it could just be little things like not wanting to eat something because of the color, or it could just be a general mood around dinner times or any meal times where there's slightly heightened anxiety. They could develop strong preferences towards certain foods, and that just makes it a little bit harder to get that variety in there. But the degree changes so much from child to child. And what you need to know as well is that picky eating is different to an actual food aversion. And so to identify the difference between the two, the picky eating thing, it's something that the child has control over themselves. It's almost a conscious decision, and it's not too extreme. You don't get the huge emotional connection to it. And it doesn't last for too long, whereas the actual aversion can look like a really extreme emotional outburst and children getting tearful when they are coming up to food, or they can start choking or gagging on foods because of different textures, and there might actually be an underlying sort of issue with that food that they're actually reacting to it physically. So it's good to try and keep an eye on the level of the response that you're getting from your child to know if it's picky eating and this is just something we can navigate together, or if it's a food aversion and you might actually need some professional help with that.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down as well, because I think that's something to really keep in mind, I guess, if you do see things starting to escalate when it comes to, that picky eating behavior. I think something else, you kind of mentioned there as well, what's funny, and I have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and my 3-year-old who, like, the fact that they do also change. I think for a good year, I thought, oh my gosh, he's such an amazing eater. He just eats everything. And then a year into it, I was like, what has happened to this little boy? And he just started going off all these things that he really, really used to like. And then he came back to them. So I guess, is it also important to keep in mind that it can actually keep changing? It's not necessarily that you introduce food, it's really successful, and then bang, that box is ticked.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't just do it and then it's done and move on. It's going to be one of those recurring things. And sometimes, and it's a really good point there, is you can come into a phase in a child's development where they're actually just exercising their right of refusal and they're just testing boundaries and they're starting to want a bit of autonomy. And sometimes they're saying no to stuff just because it feels good to say no to something and to be making their own decisions. So we let them do that a little bit. And the funny thing is like the same behaviors for picky eating, they can actually happen to unhealthy foods as well. Like kids might start rejecting chippies or lollies or, and that's actually, in a way, that's picky eating too. But we don't mind because we're like, fantastic, don't have those things then. But it's the same behavior. It's just that when it's vegetables and we know that they should be having vegetables, we are concerned. Whereas if they're rejecting something that is a sometimes food anyway, then you're just like,
we do start to panic very quickly. Now, we're going to talk about some strategies as well about, not getting too frustrated, also mimicking like good, food habits for your kids. But let's first start with like those early strategies that we can undertake when we first introduce solids. So this could even be from the level of like starting purees or baby-led weaning, just to avoid as best as possible any kind of bad habits in a child. Or is it true, for example, like what I said before, that if you give them too much fruit at the start, they're going to get a bit of a sweet tooth? What are some early things we should keep in mind?
Yeah, well, I think it really starts from the moment you become a parent. And even before then, it's just your own relationship with food. You need to be really happy and in a good place with that. If you want a really good eater, you need to be a really good eater as well and be able to demonstrate what a healthy relationship with food looks like and what healthy eating looks like. And even when you're feeding, like if you're breastfeeding, some of the flavors of the foods that you eat make it through to the breast milk. So if you're eating a diet that's rich in all the foods that you want them to be eating later on, that will actually help to slowly introduce some of those flavors. And then, when you're introducing purees in the baby's first foods, not doing too much, but just little tastes and let it be the foods that you want them to be eating longer term. With the introducing vegetables first, I definitely agree with that. You want to start with flavors that are a little bit more mild, definitely nothing too salty as well. So the sort of mashed avocado, and heck, this is so yum. Mashed avocado combined with a bit of mashed banana is actually really yum.
Oh, okay. Even for us, we're talking.
Yeah. Oh, for us, yeah. That was definitely one of those ones I'd be sort of mashing it up and then like, spoon, like I'll take that one. So you can actually do that as well. And combining some banana with the avocado actually helps to make that less intensely sweet. Because children will naturally develop a preference for sweet foods anyway. So to be able to try and steer them in the direction of something that's a bit more savory is great. But also a bit of fruit is fine. It's not going to cause picky eating or anything.
Yeah.
And then beyond that sort of first foods thing, when you're trying to make that transition from relying on either formula or breast milk over to foods, trying to feed them the food first is really good so that there's a little bit of hunger there, a little bit of extra motivation to actually eat it. And then have a little break after they've finished with that meal, have a little bit of a break before then giving them their formula or their breast milk, just so that they don't have that association with having the food, but then the milk's going to be offered straight after. So actually they'd prefer to wait for that because there's still that comfort associated there. And also if they're filled up on milk first, they're not going to be hungry enough to push it and to try new things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good tip there, especially. So, of course, we can always start with good intentions, but it is a really, I guess, stressful and anxious time for parents. You know, you start to really like overthink your strategies, and if you're giving something like, do they like it still? Why are they saying no today? Whereas they really, really liked it yesterday. There's all these things that I guess, make you second guess your approach. And in that, we can get kind of quite frustrated with baby/toddler. You know, it can really easily turn into like, we see it as, you know, they're for example just refusing for the sake of refusing. It can just like really rile things up for you. What are some of those, I guess, easy traps to fall into as a parent, which are actually not really helping the situation? It's actually making it worse for both yourself and for your child in terms of like getting them over this hump of, you know, potentially, you know, not getting a bit of a preference going with food.
Yeah. Yeah. That one about trying to stay calm and positive is such an important one, because having a heightened emotional response to it and even scaring your child a bit by, losing your temper, that can actually be the difference between moving something that is just a classic case of picky eating into a food aversion. Because if there becomes that anxiety associated with it, like that's a form of trauma, and there might be a little link there made then after that mealtime is a scary time, and yeah, it can escalate. So we really want to try and avoid that. I know all parents, we lose it sometimes, but to try and keep it really positive and calm. And I think arming yourself with a few different ways that you can communicate about food is really, really helpful, because sometimes we lose our temper just simply because we've run out of ways that we can communicate like a grown up. And so even having like little games that you can play with the food at the table, just to encourage it in different ways, rather than just repeating like eat your dinner until somebody's just run out of patience. So and that was kind of where the idea for the books came in, because I started in an attempt to actually keep myself calm at the dinner table. Sometimes would start having these little games that I'd play and do little like reenact little scenes with the carrots and the broccoli, and turn it into a little bit of a stage performance. And it just kept the vibes at the dinner time a little bit higher, and eventually we'd get the food in. So so trying to keep it positive in the way that you communicate about food, just have a few tools in the way that you like to talk about it. So another strategy that I heard of, it's from a lady called Shelley McKenzie from the Barely Balanced podcast. She introduced me to this concept called the no thank you plate, and I absolutely love it. It's a plate that you put in the middle of the table, and it's something that your child can actually take the food off their plate and put it into the one in the middle and say no thank you. But the rules around the no thank you plate is that you have to try it first. But it can just be a teeny tiny little lick or something. If you're trying to introduce a food and your child really doesn't want it, you can say it's absolutely fine, you don't need to have it, but just a little tiny try, and then pop it into the no thank you plate. And it takes it away from their plate, and then they can calm down and move on, and that's fine. But it's just that extra way to encourage just a bit of trial.
Yes, because I think that's what you find as well. And that's what can get quite frustrating, is like when they don't try it and then they just say like no or have a fit about it. And you're like, just try like one tiny bit of it. But again, like, staying calm is key in that sense. There was two little tips that I've kind of like gone by as well. Is one, just a mum friend of mine said, one night, kids again, like, it was something that they always ate, whatever it may have been, maybe some like sausages and veg, and they just didn't want it that night. And she was like exhausted. She had cooked it, and all of a sudden she just thought she put the sausages and the vegetables on a skewer just to change things up and put them on their plate. And they were like mind blown. Like they were like, what? It was the same food. They ate all of it. They asked for more. They took it off the skewer, put it back on the skewer. So it was like the simplest thing. But I guess that goes back to what you're saying, is like, think outside the box and like make it easygoing, fun, no pressure, like kind of environment, rather than this like sit down, eat your dinner, don't get up until you're finished kind of thing.
Yeah, and another strategy which is on the same kind of line as that one is if children, they like chicken nuggets and they don't like fish, and you're trying to give them some fish, but then you can just call it like beach chicken, and suddenly they
Yes.
just, and it's still, yeah. So you've just invented a new name, but now they've got
Yeah.
this different association in their mind, and they're like, oh, cool, all right, well, I'll try that one.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
The other one, this was a tip from my sister as well, who's also a nutritionist. So she has some really great ideas when it comes to kind of like getting kids to eat, fresh veggies and fruit is this concept of like a snack plate just before dinner. So,
Mm.
if your child is the type of child that like if you give them a plate and they've got like, the cucumber there and the veg and they're just like they would obviously rather go for the plain rice and the chicken or whatever over that. So you kind of know they're not really gonna like be going for the veggies at dinner. While they're kind of like running around and you're making dinner, make like a snack plate. It's got, your standard like your cucumber, your capsicum, maybe a little bit of apple on it, like a smaller portion because obviously you don't want them to get too full, but you just kind of like put it out. You don't even reference it. You just like put it next to them. They're kind of hanging out and playing. And she noticed over time with her kids that, yeah, they'd like grab a cucumber, they'd grab a piece of capsicum and just eat on it because I guess they're waiting for dinner as well and they're getting like that hunger starting to come in. And then as soon as she, approaches dinner and starts to realize that they're like eating a little bit more, everybody's at the table, which I thought was a kind of cool idea to
Yeah.
not like sneak in the veg, but kind of like con them into some
Yeah. No,
snacks before dinner.
and that's so good, yeah, for two reasons. Is, the extra opportunity to get the veg in, but also pre-dinner is such a like snackathon time, and the
Mm,
kids are constantly at you for snacks. And if you
gosh, they
and
are.
if you like, yeah, if you give in and you're doing like, yep, more cheese and crackers and bickies and whatever, then they fill up on that. So it's a great way to not give them those before dinner,
Yeah.
give them something better. And another one is trying to feed them well before their bedtime. Like try to do it at least a couple of hours before bedtime because otherwise they're too tired, and tired children are even more unreasonable than non-tired children.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is
so like we
so
we try to
true.
aim for that 5 o'clock time, which is tricky for a lot of parents. But like the earlier you can get dinner out, the more time you have, and everyone's more relaxed because you're not watching the
Mm,
clock being like, oh, now we're late for bed already and we're still eating dinner. Yeah, earlier dinner times are great as well, and be trying to eat the same foods as your child. That's another important one. So everyone's got the same meal. Oh, combining your meals so that if you're trying to introduce new foods or if you're trying to give a food that they've previously rejected a second chance, have it on the plate with foods that you know that will be accepted as well. Because I think the moment they've got those familiar, safe foods on their plate, they're going to relax. Whereas if they're given a meal that's all foods that they're unfamiliar with, you'll end up in a standoff, and either
mm.
you're going to have to offer a replacement or your child's going to go hungry, and both of those things are not a good outcome.
No, for anybody in the house.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I love that you bring up kind of like dinner time as well because I think early on, my husband and I made this mistake of just assuming like we wouldn't be eating dinner at 5 o'clock, but the
Mm,
kids eat dinner at 5 o'clock. So we were getting into this. What I found was a bad habit of like we'd tell the kids dinner's ready and get them to sit down and then just kind of like watch them eat. And they
mm,
were just not interested in sitting down and eating because it felt like I think they just felt this sense of like we've given them a task to do. And kids like they just want to do what they have chosen to do rather than what you've told them to do. But all of a sudden we kind of transitioned into we just eat at the same time. So then when everybody was eating at the table, it wasn't really like a task given to them. It was like they were part of something. So I think that is a really key way to do it. But also, and like you would relate to this as well, Lisa, like I think especially as mums, I don't know about you, but I, especially on maternity leave, when I had my youngest and then I was watching my toddler, and my toddler was in the very thick stage of like, picky eating and just getting a bit of a personality going. I remember, I'd be running around and making him breakfast, but I wouldn't be eating anything at all. And, you feel like as a mum as well, like you cut up all the strawberries and the raspberries, but like you're not allowed to touch them because they're for the kids. And again created this really bad habit of like I'd sit Noah down and be like, all right, here's your breakfast, and just expect him to eat breakfast while I'm like running around and doing like a million things. Now, of course, we can't always sit down and like have this pleasant meal as a family. But as soon as I started to just make the same breakfast, which took me an extra minute because it was all already out anyway, I was not only getting like a really good breakfast in, which was great for me, and I was breastfeeding, but he was also eating better. So it is that kind of environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's so good for you to be able to sit down and eat as well. And
Yes.
but they notice as well. I actually, because I'm a bit of a shocker when it comes to breakfast sometimes as well. I'm just rushing around. That is one that I'm having to make a conscious effort to try and like have now because my daughter said to me a wee while ago, she was just like, "Mummy doesn't have breakfast." I was like,
Mm.
mm,
Oh.
like you're not wrong, but also,
Yes.
whoops.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because then, because now she's not really having her breakfast that well, and we have to sit there and be like, come on,
Yeah.
like just get it in you. And I'm there like, she's almost 4, and I still have to like
Yeah.
feed her sometimes just
Yeah.
to get it in. That's a
Just
terrible
to get
habit,
it
but
in.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good one to identify. So tell me then, if we do get to a place where we start to really notice a lot of picky eating, how do you how do you think about, there's a lot of kind of like books out there and advice out there, and sometimes a lot of that advice is like you offer them dinner, and for example, I remember reading one that was like, you offer them dinner and dinner's dinner and that's it, and if they don't
Mm,
want it, then that they can leave. You leave their plate there, like, and then it's kind of like this, as you said, this bit of a standoff, and then it may actually result in a super hungry, super irritated child, and you're like on the edge. What is the best approach to take if there's full refusal going on?
yeah, gosh, there's not a one size fits all. Um, when there's a full refusal going on, um, yeah, it's best just to chat to your child as much as you can, like, and try to understand the why behind it, because they can often tell you like what it is, and every piece of advice that's out there has some good theories behind it and good intentions behind it, but if applied inappropriately, could actually do more harm than good. So I think the most important thing is to really try to understand what is causing that refusal. Sometimes they have a sore tummy and you just need to chat through that with them. Sometimes they need to do a poo, and
Yeah.
then once they've done that, they can come back to it. Other times, they're actually having trouble. Maybe there's meat that they're having trouble chewing. Ask them about it and try to talk about the different parts, and just offer lots of suggestions of, is it maybe this that's causing you not to want it? Just show them as much patience and empathy and understanding and curiosity as you can, just so that they feel like you care, that they're having trouble with it, and that you're not just trying to overrule them and and tell them what to do, because there might be something deeper going on there that you need to know about. If it goes on for too long, that is probably when you need to start seeking help from a professional who's able to come in and start trying to identify things like food sensitivities, if there's like any sort of emotional associations going on. Because if it goes on too long, that can start to result in nutrient deficiencies, which is really concerning. So, yeah, you just want to identify it as early as possible if it's a bigger problem. But yeah, just talk to your kids.
Yeah, really good
They'll
advice
tell
there.
you a lot. Mm.
I also wanted to ask about, and after this we'll get into your amazing books, but I also wanted to ask about, parents and their assumptions when it comes to how much kids should eat. Because I think, sometimes we also let that really take over. Like, you've got to finish your plate, but then your child is saying like, I'm full, I don't want to eat anymore. But then you feel like they've had like not much. So of course, like, on the one hand, making sure that, kids healthy and like happy and there's no actual medical issues going on, but is that also an expectation that for some reason parents like put this pressure on their kids on how much to eat, and the fact that they haven't eaten enough vegetables as opposed to this and that? Should we be a little bit more chill about that as well?
Definitely we should be a little bit more chill, and it will like ebb and flow. There's their appetite levels when they're going through a growth, because it's not like a linear line, their growth. They'll have little growth spurts and then they'll plateau. And during those growth spurt times, they eat a lot. Like you can eat a lot. Not every child does, but they can eat a lot. And sometimes I'm really shocked that my son can eat more than me, and
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's only 5, and like yeah, he can get through it. But then other days he'll sort of have a little pick, and then he'll be like, no, my body says I'm full, and I'm like, okay. And especially if they get a little bit under the weather, then their appetite's going to drop as well. So it's not going to be the same every day. So yeah, definitely needs to be a little bit of grace. Like try to encourage them to eat a little bit more if you feel like they've eaten a particularly small meal, because nice full bellies keep them asleep for longer too, which is another
Yes.
wonderful bonus. But if they're really, if it's only like a temporary thing, and they're saying that they're full, I think just let them for at least a few days. Just allow them to lead with what their appetite is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can just chill out.
Yeah, I guess that comes back to as well, just talking to them and like just trusting in kind of what they're saying as well at the
Yeah.
time. It's so funny you bring up your son. The other day, I was talking to my sister and she was giving me like a lunchbox recommendation, because I am now doing 2 preschool lunchboxes, which is a big transition for me after, just relying on daycare food for a really long time.
Yeah.
The
It's rough
lunchbox.
having to.
I know the
Yeah.
lunchbox phase is exciting, to say the least. And she linked me this lunchbox, and she goes, "Oh, this is the one I use for my daughter." And I was like, "Anna, that is tiny. My kids eat like." I was just like, "Oh my gosh, then that's not enough." I was like, just knowing how much my boys eat, and like every child is different, right? And whether it's like boy, girl, or personality, whatever it is, it was just really funny because I was like, "Oh no, I need like 3 of those
Yeah,
because I
that's
know
not the
how much
lunchbox
they
for me.
eat." So every kid is so different in how much they eat. The other thing I really wanted to quickly touch on is snacks. And we touched on it slightly before, but we do, I think, especially when you are out and about with a baby and you've just started solids, you tend to pack a lot of snacks.
Mhm.
And I think because, and I don't know, you can maybe talk to this as well, Lisa, but I feel like especially when I had my babies around, it was like an activity giving them a snack. So it felt like it was pretty frequent, because I'd go, okay, if I'm sitting at a cafe, I'd give them something to snack on, because then they can sit and like hang out. But obviously we want to also aim to have actual proper good meals and for them to be hungry enough for a meal. What is the best way to approach snacks?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's going to be a little bit different here. Yeah, we're the same. Snacking has almost become like a form of entertainment, particularly
Yes.
like in car rides, and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
they sort of quieten down in the back if they've got something to munch on. Um, yeah, snacking is actually good, and particularly if you're choosing good snacks. Kids' tummies are a little bit smaller, and so more meals throughout the day is really good. It's just going to help you get the nutrients in again if you're picking good snacks. Um, yeah, I love to go for berries and veggie sticks, and we also do like plain crackers, and we just try to keep things quite simple with the snacks. Um, but then yeah, trying to stop that for a wee while before a meal is quite important. But yeah, but I'm all for the snacks.
Okay. Good.
But
Good
yeah,
to
once
know.
once they get a little bit older, like yeah, you don't want them to rely on it either though when you head out, because we're definitely at the stage now where the moment we get in the car, the kids are like, "What snacks have you packed for us?" It's a 10-minute trip. We're going to be just
Yeah.
fine. Like yeah,
Yeah.
just leave it. But yeah, no, I believe in the power of snacking. You'll find the ones that suit you the best.
Amazing. Well, let's talk about these amazing book series that you've created. As you mentioned, it kind of like stemmed from, making meal times fun and interesting, and in some way also promoting these great vegetables that they could not just be friends with but also eat. So talk
Yeah.
us through your books, and what the concept is, and what parents can kind of, how they can use them.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so it was yeah, again, just during the dinner times I'd start doing little plays, and because I'm a massive metabolic biochemistry nerd, I would make my adventures about the nutrition that was within the food, so that it could start explaining to my kids like why food is actually good for you, because they do start asking, and there's only so many whys you can respond to before you're like, you know what, I don't know. Because they're like, why is this good for you? I'm like, I don't know. It's a vegetable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, why? And you're like,
Yeah.
nah, I got nothing.
Yeah.
So there's actually, it helps parents as well to understand and to put it in a way that kids will understand too why different foods are good for you. So I started with broccoli because broccoli is just, I feel like it represents, it's
Tough
like
one.
the number one vegetable of being like, if your kid eats broccoli, you've nailed
Yeah.
it. So yeah, and my son was adorable. He loved to pronounce broccoli as Bocky. So I named the book Bocky the Brave. And yeah, and it's just this little adventure of a child who's really little and he's too short to go on a roller coaster. Um, he eats his broccoli, and then the magical folate powers that broccoli has helps his bones to grow while he sleeps, and he wakes up and he's tall, and then he's allowed to go on the roller coaster. So it's just a really simple story like that. And once I did one, I was like, oh, this is quite addictive actually.
Yeah.
So the whole series was born, and the series is called The Secret Adventures of the Dinner Plate Pals. So these are the secret adventures that they go on when they're in the body, and I'm just about to release the full series. So there's 7 books, and it covers, like, it's a nutritionally complete rainbow. So pretty much everything that you need in a sort of healthy core diet is there. And yeah, it just really explains why. And they're these adorable little stories, and they give you great ammunition of just what you can talk about at the dinner table. And if kids are refusing food, then you can kind of talk back about the story again. It just gets their imaginations going and makes the characters all super approachable and fun. There's definitely, like, look at this little capsicum, look how cute he is. There's no way that would cause
That's
any
Dr. Red
anxiety.
Pepper.
Yeah, Dr.
Love
Red
it.
Pepper. Yeah, so it's yeah, I've enjoyed writing them. I'm so excited to bring the rest of the books out. So it's just a hobby that really got out of hand, but I'm loving it.
Yeah, I love it. And it's got such a great purpose to it as well. Well, we are actually doing a giveaway with you. Thank you so much for being so
Very
generous.
welcome.
The first 3 books in the series, so that is Bocky the Brave, The Wild Rice, and Dr. Red Pepper.
Yeah.
I love that you've got rice in there because I feel like rice is such a staple for parents.
Yeah, it is.
It is a
and
real
a lot of people, they forget that it's
unsung
healthy.
hero.
Yeah.
It really is. So yes, if you would like to enter the giveaway, I'm going to pop a link in the show notes of where you can enter. And that is on the website, heynicolinak.co, but we'll get everybody's entries in there, and one lucky listener will win those first 3 books in the series. Lisa, it's been such a pleasure to chat to you about this topic. I think every parent is going to go through this at some point on a different level. So it's really nice to touch on all the different aspects of, I guess, food, mealtime, picky eating, healthy habits, all that sort of stuff. If you guys would like to keep up with the books, and also Lisa, you can catch her on Instagram at the.coffee.table.nutritionist, and the website is coffeetablenutrition.com. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.